Welcome to the next installment of Right Here, Right Now. Recently, I was introduced by Tim Blake, our student pastor. We started a young adult ministry, and he said, "Matt's the money pastor." That's not exactly how it works, but I guess it works out good because we're covering the four core values that we believe here that God's called us here at the Grove, and that's to gather, grow, give, and go. So the money pastor is going to talk about giving today. It's going to be awesome. We're going to take a second offering, make sure that we get enough this morning. We're going to pass plate 3 or 4 more times. It's going to be good. Kidding. Money is certainly a part of giving, but if that's all we can think about giving being in the church, I think we've missed the big picture. And so we're going to look at a principle found in kind of an odd passage. It's John 2. We're going to be in today. And it's the wedding feast in Cana where Jesus actually performs his very first miracle, which is an interesting one because Jesus' first miracle was bartending. So it's an interesting one, but I want us to kind of recap for just a few moments. We've been in this vision series and kind of letting you behind the curtain some. Bill and I were talking this past spring about the direction. He said, hey, how should we, he likes to map out his sermons for the majority of the year at least, so he has an idea where we're wanting to go. And we were collaborating on the summertime, and I said, I think summertime is a great season to talk about vision and where you feel like God's leading you, what's the next steps for the church, because we all know, if you've been in church for a couple of years, attendance is down in the summertime, and usually when we take vacation and stuff, and there's no judgment being passed, but we kind of boil down to our core in the summertime. I said, so your summer crew is everyone that's like really with you. So let's share some of the vision stuff with folks. So as the fall comes and the kids get back in school, if you've never noticed this before, now you'll not be able to unsee it. Fall comes, and when the kids get back on the school schedule, the attendance all of a sudden just jumps right back up with church. It's like a miracle, modern day miracle. Summertime is always low. So I said, let's talk with our folks about where you feel like God's leading us with the folks that are here even when it's hot, even when they could be at the pool. So it's a good way to do this. Instead of to wrap this, to kind of repackage, to tell you guys where we've been. We started out this series, we're talking about digging a ditch. If you remember, if you were here, if you're not, it's okay, because you don't need to have heard the other ones to get anything today, but they have all kind of built. And so the first one, we're talking about digging a ditch, metaphorically, and that God brings the rain. And so it's our job to work and prepare and do everything we can, and then to trust God for the rain. And then really our senior pastor, the very next week, he came and said, okay, here's the rain I believe God is going to bring. Here's what I believe he's leading us in. And if you were here that day, or if someone's told you, the 2 areas mainly that he feels we're going to focus on is kids, our kids space, and our budget. And the reason he's doing that, and to break that down, if you weren't here, he would like for us to take our whole Family Life Center building and devote that to kids. And so we're going to look at a nice remodel project, get our kids from that wing and to consolidate them all over there. That way we have one secure building so that we have one entrance. It's easier for security purposes. We can really refashion that. And then all of our children are in one building. And then we remodel at the same time that wing and bring our adult education space over there. So that's part of the vision. The other is to reallocate the budget. And I don't have the graph for you. It was a great way of explaining. We're changing how we distribute basically our tithe. Because whatever you guys give, we tithe right back out. And so a lot of it was going to across seas, and when we looked, our local missions budget was kind of anemic. So we're kind of reallocating so that we're giving equal portions to our own community, our state, and then our world. So those are the areas that he camped out at, and the reason being is that we've known, you've heard us talk about this throughout this series, our community is 85% unchurched. And we're not going to tell you that church attendance equals salvation, because that's not biblical, but someone who's living a life in Christ Jesus and not in community, we have to just kind of err on the side of caution, and we've got to assume that they probably don't have a relationship with Jesus. We certainly could go through periods of time where we fall out of church and life gets busy, but it's very hard to do this life without the church. It's kind of the whole point. This community is here for a reason. And so we said we have to err on the side of caution and just trust that those 85% are lost, and they are unchurched for a reason. They have no relationship with Jesus. So in that, Bill said, let's attack that number. Let's reach 20% of them, which is 6,000 people. And he said, I know that's kind of an audacious step. So if you remember, if you're here that week, he said, last Easter, we had 1,020 people here. He said, that's our sphere of influence. Those are the people that when they're all here on one day, if you were here this last Easter, there was barely room. We were like butt cheek to butt cheek. It was awesome. Not that part, but it was awesome to see so many people here. And so he said, let's shoot for being able to reach our sphere of influence on every single Sunday. So he said that's kind of a nice intermediate step. So that's kind of where he took us. And then we've been going through the gather, grow, give, go. And gather was about gathering. If you were here, we talked about worship and why it's important for you to be here. Last week, our pastor talked about growing and talked about how we do that. Our strategy here at the Grove is through groups. And we offer many different kinds of groups. We have on-campus ones that meet on Sunday morning. We have some that meet on campus during the week. Most of those are on Wednesday nights. And then we have groups that meet in our homes all over Northern Kentucky on various nights of the week. So that talked about the importance of you getting into a group, doing life with others. It was a fantastic message. I had two or three people come up to me this week and say they never really considered the importance of it. So I'm glad to hear y'all's response. If you haven't signed up for Group Connect yet, I'm asking you, take advantage of childcare if you have kids and the free meal. To use us. You just can use us for, if you have no intention, just use us for the free meal. I'm going to order La Rosa's. It's going to be good. And come and eat, hang out with us. Or if you've been in the same class for 50 years, wherever you are on the spectrum, we want you guys to come to that event. This connection event is, for one, it's to help you get connected if you'd like to, or if you just want to check things out. But it's also, if you're already connected, it's a way to show people, hey, look at this awesome group of people that we want to connect you with. You can do that on the YouVersion Bible app. We have the link for that there. Also, if you want to be a group leader, you can use the YouVersion app. That link is there as well. And there's actually a sign-up sheet on the little pup table out there. You can, if you like old school pen and paper, you're welcome to do that too. But this idea of groups is how we try to facilitate these environments where you can do life with others, and that's where we were camping out last week. So this week, we're going to talk about give. And I know it's always funny. It's usually, the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. It's like, money in church is the worst thing. But I think that giving is really half of the formula. The Bible talks about time, talent, and treasure. And so finances are certainly a part of that. But there's so many times where we like to check off one box and not the other. I've actually heard people say, well, I went up for the work day, so I kind of donated my time, so I'm not going to give financially because I tithe my time this week. That's literally not what a tithe is at all, but we do that. Or on the flip side, it's like, well, I'm kind of busy, or no one actually admits this. Well, a few people do. They say, I'm really important, so I'll just write a check, but I'm just not going to serve. It's a weird little trifecta that they all kind of work together. And so giving is just so much more than finances. And I want us to imagine walking away from finances. Imagine with me for a moment what this Sunday morning would have looked like if nobody served. So you pull up into our parking lot, and our parking team isn't out there. Which usually you see Travis with his orange vest on. He's usually the first entrance to greet you as you come in. And we've got our team, and now we're getting a bunch of teenagers. Ray's gotten a bunch of the teen, and it's usually guys got to step up because it's usually the girls, and they're doing awesome and making the guys look bad. They're out there and they're smiling, they're waving at you, and maybe high-fiving you, making you feel welcome. They put the flags out. And look, if you've been coming here your whole life, the flags aren't a big deal because you know where the church is. Sometimes it's hard to remember what it was like the very first time we visited a church. It's an intense moment, especially if you have kids and you're like, what's the nursery going to be like? And are these people going to make me feel safe? And where do I go? No one wants to walk into a room and look like they don't know what they're doing. And so part of that team tries to ease that a little bit. So you have to imagine that no one out there to greet you. And you got Austin and his team. He's always there holding the door for you. If it's raining, if Austin has a chance, he's going to run down those steps with an umbrella, and he'll probably walk you in the rain. And he's got his whole team of folks that are helping do that. You got Penny and her whole team that are there to greet you and help you get connected. They're the ones that, if it's your first time and you've got kids and you're like, this building is huge, and believe me, we make it complicated here because if you got little kids that go there, if you got medium kids that go there, if you got big kids that go there, if you got teenagers that go down there. And so those ladies that help with that ministry, they're running you guys all over the building. Imagine none of them are here. There's no one to tell you where to go. There's no flags, no signage to direct you. You had to open your own door. Austin wasn't here. You had to find the offering plates in the lobby because the ushers, they didn't pass the plate today. Imagine I guess really Chris is our staff guy, so he would have been all alone. If no one volunteered, he'd been so lonely on the stage with his guitar, although I like acoustic services, that may be cool. But none of the instruments, none of the people that serve here, you would have had none of that going on if no one served. The one thing, I talked about this in the early service, I love our sound and our lighting guys, because they remind me, when I played football, I was considered a non-skilled position. I was an offensive lineman, which meant you only mattered when you messed up. If you have no understanding of what football, if you do any football, if you're not a fan or you never played, the offensive lineman, their only job is to protect quarterback. And so when you do your job, it's like, listen, that's your job. Why would I give you praise? But if you miss a block and the quarterback gets sacked, it's usually fat. They always call you fat. You stupid fat lineman, you let the quarterback get sacked. Your only recognition you get as a lineman is when you mess up. It's a thankless position. And I think about our production team. It really is, because this is how it works in church. And they already know because they've experienced it. When they do their job, you don't even know they exist up there. Right? Like, if the words are perfect, you're like, yeah, they should be perfect. Why would they not be perfect? If the music, if the mix is awesome, you don't even notice that they're there, which is that's why they do that. They want to make our service free of distractions. But the one time the slide is late, or like, remember a couple weeks ago when we had like a demon in our sound system and it was really loud and screechy? Anytime something like that happens, here's what we all do. We're sitting on our pews and we do it at the same time. And we just stare them down until they fix it, which totally helps, by the way. When they mess up, just stare, because that makes them work better, and it's awesome. So we love you guys. We appreciate all the hard work y'all do up there. You don't notice them until something goes wrong. There are so many little things that happen at church, and we haven't even talked about the big one yet. Kids. I want you to think for a moment. Imagine with me that Missy and her volunteers and everyone said, nah, we quit. We all quit today. We're not doing it. It's not happening. And they'd be sitting next to you in these pews. Now, some of you that are really spiritual would say, well, amen, that's fantastic. Family worship, I love it. And you'd be a liar, because you know just as well as I do, it would be awful to have all of our kids in here right now. I have a toddler. If I say, listen, Brooklyn, 2-year-old little Brooklyn who doesn't do anything that I tell you to do, I need you to sit and be quiet and don't play and don't fidget and don't poke your sister and put that down. And then what she would do, she'd find her friend Piper, who'd be a couple rows behind her, and she'd go, Piper! And then Piper would be like, Brooklyn! And it's like, shh, stop it. And then all you moms, that's the worst ever, because you've been to the churches where you have your kids there. Church is awful if you have your kid next to you, because you're trying to keep it together, right? You're trying to look spiritual, like a godly woman, Proverbs woman, and you know you're not going to like backhand your kid, and you're not going to like raise your voice. So you do the little subtle mom things where you do like the crazy eyes. And we all had that moment with our mom, and my mom was like here in the service today, and she had the look she can give me, and I was like, it's serious. It just got real. Like, I'm getting spankings before we're not even going to make it to the car. And so there was always, y'all's moms, you have those looks where you can give. It's awful. You haven't heard anything the preacher said. You go to the church, get your cup filled up, and all you do is you smack your kid in the car ride home because of all the bad things they did in the pew. It would be awful. Hug Missy and hug all of the kids workers. Even if your kids have been out of the ministry for 50 years today, go hug them, because they kept all those little wonderful angels out of the service this morning. Because they're not supposed to be here. This is an environment for adults, and we have environments for them, and sometimes this will go over their head. My daughter Caroline would be going, I'm bored. Amen to those kids, volunteers. But it's funny, because here I have to say imagine, right? Like, imagine what that'd be like. It'd be so crazy if we had. But the reality is there's a lot of churches, that's what they deal with every single week. They've stopped thinking about their guests. They've stopped thinking about their volunteers. And so if you're a guest here this morning, this is a great peek at the church. Especially if maybe you're new to Christianity and you're just checking things out. I'm really, the best part about this is it's not for you. I'm going to be talking to believers this morning, and particularly church members here. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to be like, this is on you guys. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to listen. This is a fantastic opportunity to hear what the church is about. If you are a member, or at least if you are a believer here, this is really, I think, a heart of a matter issue that Jesus is going to drive home in John chapter 2, and it's one that we miss a lot. The idea of serving is very difficult sometimes for us. And how fast-paced the world goes, I think it's so easy sometimes to forget about that. But giving has this unique relationship with time, talent, and treasure. So let's jump into John chapter 2 and look at this. I'm going to kind of stop as I go, just give you a heads up. We'll read through this together, and I'm going to kind of teach as I go. So I'm in an ESV translation, just to give you a heads up. So John chapter 2, verse 1, and it says, "On the third day there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there." So there are two quick things that they're telling us through this. Third day is symbolic of the resurrection. And a wedding is symbolic of the new covenant that we have in Jesus Christ because of his blood. And so the language that the church, that the scriptures actually use between the church and Jesus is one of a bride and a bridegroom. And so the church is his bride, Jesus is the bridegroom. We get this theology wrong a lot. We'll argue in churches who the church, like who's supposed to be the sermons are crafted to. You ever had this conversation like, I've been saved 20 years. I'm tired about learning how to get saved. I wish he would preach, deeper. I want him to go deeper. There needs to be a new nugget to learn. I got to have a new Greek word to take home. I got to have, something. I'm tired of hearing about the same salvation story. And then if you've got like a lost husband or wife or a kid, or maybe you're bringing a neighbor or a family member, all you're thinking about is, man, I hope this is an evangelistic message. I hope he really explains today how to get saved. And you're really not even worried about being taught. You're like, I got small groups for that. I need the preacher to do the evangelism. And so usually the evangelistic preacher, the congregation says, I wish he would do some more discipleship. I wish he would teach. His pushback is usually, if you tell people about Jesus, I wouldn't have to do it from the stage every week, and it's awkward. The reality, though, is that it's kind of both and, because the church is for Jesus. We are for him. It's really easy to make services and methods and models about us, and it's backwards. The church is for Jesus. And so here he is, he's in this wedding, and this is interesting. It points out the mother of Jesus was there. Verse 2, Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. This is really key for us to hear. And this is a principle that's so simple that we lose so easily. Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. Well, we so to speak, we have a wedding ceremony every Sunday morning at 9:30 and 11. And I bet, even if it was your parents, and maybe it's not so much of an invitation, you were drugged to church, but at some point, someone invited you to a church service. We're all here because we were invited at one point. Nobody is born a Christian. It doesn't work that way. You have to say yes to following Jesus. And if we're being honest, some of us, it's been a long time since we've invited someone else to the wedding. You know where the good stuff's at, and you get it every week, and our pastor does a fantastic job, and we still struggle. In every church in the country, it's not a Hickory Grove problem, it's a human sin problem. We know where the good stuff is at, we know where the source is at, and for some reason we stop inviting others to the wedding. Jesus was invited to the wedding, and also his disciples. Another interesting thing to point out is this is not a Christian ceremony. This is a wedding. These are secular folks. This is sinners. He had made such a relationship with outsiders. Jesus was cool enough to get invited to all the parties. Do you ever think of it like that? When you read through the Gospels, Jesus was a popular guy. Here he was. He's this rabbi, this teacher. Okay, he's obviously different. There's speak of him later on in the Gospels of him performing all these miracles. Jesus can't stop getting invited to parties. It's so interesting. In church, we flip that upside down. We think the opposite is true. I actually had a mom tell me one time in Texas when I was a youth pastor out there. She told me I was like the worst influence on her kid's life. And I told her, I was like, I think I'm the only influence on your kid's life outside of her family. And I'm not picking on how they educate or anything, but they were very wealthy, and they owned a very large farm, and they literally never left the farm other than to go to church. And she said, you're the worst influence in my kid's life. And so, well, thank you. That's what I try to do here at the church, is destroy relationships with children and their parents. Could you tell me why? And she was saying, we had done a lot of ministry in North Lufkin, which is where the poor people live and where the minorities live and people of other colors lived. And we were inviting them and we were ministering to them, and they were getting saved, and our youth ministry was exploding. And she didn't like all the bad kids going to church with her kid. And I was like, I was such at a loss. I was like, I'm just not going to apologize for that. I'm never going to tell you I'm sorry that we're inviting lost people to the church. You realize that's what the church is for, right? It's not about you. If you read the Gospels, Jesus didn't want to hang out with the religious people. He didn't like those guys. In fact, the times when Jesus spoke to and about the religious people, it was intense words. He was not very nice to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It was awesome. I would have liked Jesus because he was satirical and he had attitude. It was great. He liked the lost people. And this lady tells me one time, she's like, worst influence. And her kid probably heard a sex joke or a cuss word or something inappropriate, and I have no doubt that it was not appropriate. But it was, you realize this is how this thing works, right? This is the only organization that exists for those who are not yet members. We exist so that those outside of the church can know the Jesus that we sing about and we preach about inside the church. It's totally backwards how we like to live. Jesus was invited to parties. Jesus and his disciples were. It's interesting. I wonder how few of us have zero influence with outsiders. Are we living our lives in such a way where we're meeting new people? Or do we see the same people all the time? I get it. It's easy. I'm a pastor. I work with professional Christians, okay? There ain't nobody lost here, and if they are, then we're terrible at our jobs, because hopefully we would see that. I work with Christians and pastors all day long. I have to intentionally insert myself into environments where I'm going to meet lost people. It's difficult. You have to be intentional. Jesus did it, and he did it really well. And so at this wedding, in verse 3, we learn something really bad happens. It says, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And you're probably thinking, good, shouldn't be drinking anyways. What's wrong with you? Jesus can't believe you're being a bartender. Well, there's some cultural context. Let's break apart here. So wine was seen very differently back then. We read in Matthew 9:17, it says, you can't put new wine into old wineskins. Wine has this symbolic meaning of life. People get real nervous about this subject because our culture, we see it as a symbol of death. And look, I'm not picking or judging. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that having a glass of wine is sin, because you're not going to find Scripture to support that. What you are going to see in Scripture is if you want to screw up your life, fall in love with the drink. Like if you want to have marital issues, if you want to have poor standing in the community, if you want to have barriers between you and Jesus, if you want to have a lot of issues, not only following Jesus, but just living this life in general, if you want to have a lot of issues, fall in love with the drink. That's what the Scriptures are pretty clear about. So in our day, we see a lot of times people will self-medicate with alcohol. It's very, very rare. I taught students this one time. They were asking me a bunch of questions about this, and I said, well, let's have an honest conversation. Can you have a drink after the age of 21? Because before that, you're not obeying man's law, so it's sin. Like, are we allowed to have a drink when we're in college? We turn 21? And I said, yeah. And I freaked the other parents out. I said, yeah. I mean, scripturally, there's nothing. If you're not a pastor, you're not an ordained minister, there's nothing that says you can't. You're like, this is awesome, bro. And I was like, but let me tell you how this works. I know in your 21-year-old mind, at that time they were younger than that, so I know you think you'll have all this control and you'll just conquer this. Here's the reality. You're not supposed to be drunk. And you as a young person who's never drank before, you're not going to be good at knowing where that's at. In fact, I dare say you will have to cross over into the sin threshold many, many, many times before you learn where that line is. That's why conventional wisdom, that's why in our church we're going to teach you, this is not a fantastic idea. It is better for you to abstain. So we have this weird cultural thing going on here where we've seen destructive nature, and maybe we have stories in our own life we can talk about where we see this as a symbol of death, but you've just got to understand this was not the same way in the Scriptures. So try to go easy on our first century brothers and sisters. Wine is a symbol of life. This is a good thing. It was used sparingly, and it was used in times of celebration like this. The other thing we see it used for is medicine. 1 Timothy 5:23 says, Paul told Timothy to stop drinking only water, but to use a little wine. Modern technology and modern medicine has come a long way. But even Timothy was getting sick because of the quality of the water. So they would drink wine from time to time to be able to put something in their body that was not going to make them sick. So other than the wine, the other thing that was very different was weddings back then. Now, if you're ever at a wedding that I'm preaching, I don't even know how to do a 2-hour wedding. That script, I don't even have that sermon script. I like let's do 20, 25 minutes, and then go eat. That's usually the plan that I'm on with weddings. So it's the express version. Jesus, all right, we're married. It's not that fast, but it's fast. It's 15, 25 minutes. This was not the case in these days. The Jewish festival sometimes would last weeks on end. Weddings could last for days and days. These were huge, huge gatherings where everyone in the town who was invited would be hanging out at this wedding, and this would go on for a long time. The other thing that we kind of miss, and culturally we don't have this as much here, is honor was a really big deal to a first century Jew. Your word was your bond. I wish we still had that. That would be awesome. But your word was a contractual bond, and to not honor someone, really actually, gift giving here was regulated by law. So if you messed up on your gifts, and it would not just be public shame. You have a kid's birthday party and you don't order enough pizza, or the piñata didn't have enough pieces of candy in it, not every kid got one. You'd be like, oh, it's so embarrassing. I'm so sorry. Pretty much everyone would forgive you. They'd talk about you later after the party, obviously, but they would forgive you if there wasn't enough pizza. Here, this was the worst of the worst. There was a way to say, we don't honor you, we don't respect you, we don't care about you, we didn't prepare for you. This would have been one of the worst ways you could have been disrespected in their community. And so this idea of the wine, the weddings, and the system of honor was very different. So when we read, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said they have no wine, we're like, who cares? This would have been horrible. Would have ruined the whole entire wedding. Verse 4, it says, and Jesus said to her, woman, what does that have to do with me? That is not your memory verse for this week. That is, students, that's not your memory verse for this week. Do not tell your mom this week when she asks you to do something, woman, what does that have to do with me? Don't say that. It says, my hour has not yet come. All he is saying here is, I am appealing to my Heavenly Father, and if it doesn't appease the will of my Heavenly Father, I'm not interested in it. He's saying, my earthly ministry is up to the Lord, the Father. I follow Him. So, which we kind of do the opposite. We will serve earthly masters or paychecks or whatever is important to us, and then God calls us to something, or Heavenly Father calls us to something. We're like, I don't really have time. I know I should lead a life group next go round. I know that you're pulling me. We say no all the time because we serve heavenly authorities. This mother of Jesus says to him, it says in verse 5, his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. That's still great advice today. You should consider following that again today. So here we have this moment. She's fixing things. And I would imagine Mary was really, really sweet and awesome. But I love the mom pressure she's putting on her son. She's probably asked, there's no wine. It would be fantastic if somebody could do something about that. Jesus. And Jesus was like, listen, woman, my hour hasn't come. And then just to hurry things along, she didn't really, that's all he says. And she goes, servants, do whatever it tells you. Mom is just getting stuff started here. She's making sure this goes along. And it says now in verse 6, now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Let's explain these for just a minute. When I read this passage as a kid, I thought it was weird. And I hear Jesus as a bartender. I don't really know what's going on. Stone jars. Well, okay, cool, stone jars. And I'm picturing clay stone jars, something from the olden days, and maybe like that big. And I didn't even listen to the measurements. And that's not at all the case. These were massive, massive chunks of stone. You would have been seeing something that stood probably 5.5 feet tall. They would have spanned this whole little platform area here. They would have taken that up. If you actually ever go on an Israel tour, you can go to Cana, and they have some of these in glass cases to show you how large they really were. They would have been a solid chunk, and they would have weighed about a half ton, about 1,000 pounds of stone. And in the center, they would have had a hollowed out portion that would have looked something like a bathtub. It would have been between 20 and 30 gallons. So this is not, I'm thinking in my mind like this little pot. This is a massive piece of stone with a bathtub carved out in the center of it, holding 20 to 30 gallons. Mary says to Jesus, or to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Jesus is looking at these. You notice he's got this knack for, he just kind of uses what he has. In church today, we think, oh, we need a bigger building, we need better lighting, we need better sound. All these things are cool, and I like new stuff too. But Jesus never had all these qualifications, like, if we have these things, then I can work. He said, all right, we got stone jars, rice purification, we're going to use those. So there's 6 of them. 6 bathtubs. And to give you some perspective, if you've ever carried a gallon of milk or water, you know those things are heavy. And you're right, they are 8.36 pounds for every gallon of water. 8.36 pounds. So the math works out to each container, depending upon how big the well was dug inside the container, would have been anywhere from 167 to 250 pounds of water. So now it's like, that totally puts in perspective. I'm picturing in my mind, will you get my jars for me, my lovely wife assistant? And there's one under Debbie. Sorry, Debbie. Put you guys to work this morning. Thank you. So when I read this the first couple of times I was a kid, in my mind I'm thinking like something like this. Like, oh, Jesus had, he made 6 bottles of wine. So nice of him to step up like that. That's not at all the case. This would have taken several trips to fill this up. And here's what the text actually says. They filled him up with water. Right? So Jesus makes the wine in a minute. That's the miracle. But the servants are the ones that are being sent. Verse 7, it says, Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars up with water, and they filled them up to the brim. Now, on our day, worst case scenario, you have a hose or a faucet or something. You have some kind of running water. We're used to plumbing in our houses. They didn't have it. They would have gone to a well in the center of the city, and they would have had to, they weren't going to pick up these 1,000-pound stone containers and then add an additional 250 pounds. They wouldn't have enough servants to do that anyways. They would have taken some kind of container all the way over to the well. And if you visit there today, scholars can speculate to the site of the wedding. We don't know exactly. The scripture isn't real clear. But they would have guessed anywhere from around a football field. Around about 100 yards they would have had to walk. It doesn't say the physical condition or the age of the servants. So we would have had some that are stronger and some that are weaker. But if you've ever carried, this is a 5-gallon jug, this is quite a bit of weight. You would have filled something like this up. So someone who was a little bit stronger would have walked all the way to the well. They would have been there. They would have filled up their bucket. They would have come all the way back to the wedding feast. They would have walked up to their giant bathtub stone container. They would have poured the water in, and they would have started that trip over again. Now, this is pretty heavy. If it was an older servant or a weaker servant, they may have used something like this, which is a gallon. They would have taken their gallon container. They would have walked all the way to the well. They would have filled it up, trying to get as much water as possible, not spilling, walking slowly, trying to be careful, and they would have dumped that in. An older or weaker servant, someone that had even less strength, they would have used a smaller container like this, like a cup. They would have walked all the way to the well. They would have filled their cup up. They would have come back, tried not to spill, trying to be a good servant, and they would have poured that in. And they would have filled 6 of those up. It's a lot of work. When you read this stuff in the text, you think, oh, okay, they turn on the faucet and they fill up these things. This would have taken a significant amount of time. They would have been sweaty by the time this was done. They would have stunk by the time this was done. They would have been exhausted. And if you've ever done a job that you're not really liking to do, especially if it's manual labor, I don't know if they said it out loud, but they were probably like, this is so stupid. I can't believe I have to walk all the way to the center of town. The host should have prepared, got some more wine, because it's like cancer. Once someone starts griping, like the whole group starts griping, like negativity breeds negativity. And then someone else is like, I know that. They should have got all the wine. We're doing all the work. They had to have been upset, and they're hot and they're sweaty. You're in an arid desert climate, and they're filling it up, and they're going back and forth, and it says that they fills them all up to the brim. It's water. All this is water. And then something happens that changes everything. It says in verse 8, and he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master, he meaning Jesus, draw some out, take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. It's still water at this point. Still water. So they took it, and when the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and did not know where it came from. I love this. I'm in the ESV, it says in parentheses, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then the poor wine, but you have kept the good wine till now. And this is the first of his signs that Jesus did in Cana in Galilee, and it manifested his glory, and the disciples believed in him. So to give you just a touch more context, I know none of you good people will know the difference, but there are varying levels of alcohol. I know you don't know. And so what they would do is they would serve the top shelf, like primo wine, and drunk freely. Wasn't that an eloquent way that the Bible put it? They drunk freely. When they were drunk, when they were intoxicated, then they would take the really expensive wine, because it costs a lot, and they would replace it with the cheap bottom shelf box wine for 99 cents. And nobody would even notice, because they were drunk freely at that point. And they would do the switcheroo on them, and the party was still wonderful and great, and the owners could save some money by giving them the lowbrow stuff. I know you don't know what I'm talking about. And so this is happening, and Jesus actually makes really good wine. So not only is his first miracle, he's a bartender. Apparently he's a very talented bartender. And they say, this is fantastic. Most people, and so, boy, he just raises the credibility of the host. Because they would have thought, they put the cheap box stuff out. But no, Jesus, all of a sudden this new wine is made, and it's wonderful. And everyone's excited. And so if you caught the little caveat there, the master of the feast is loving it. Bridegroom's loving it. All the guests are enjoying it, right? It's the best wedding ever. The wine is just so good. We're all having a good time. We're having this celebration, this new life, this new marriage is beginning. It's wonderful. None of them had any clue what had happened. They all missed it. Everyone that came there to be served missed it. It says, only the servants who drew the water knew. And the same is true in our churches today. Listen, you can be here your whole life and you can never give financially, and you can never teach a class, or you can never serve, you can never pour a cup of coffee, you can never change a diaper in nursery, you can never get up early and get sweaty and put a flag out. You can never hold a door open, you can never open an umbrella for someone, you can never put a bulletin in someone's hand, you can never sweep a floor, you can never clean a toilet. You're welcome to do that, and we will love you, and you and I can be friends, and we can hang out. But if you never serve, you'll never know. You will enjoy the benefits of those who come to serve the wine, but you'll never see the miracle. Don't miss what's going on here. Only the servants saw the miracle that Jesus performed. No one else knew. It was the servant that went and got the water and saw that it was water in the purification pot and saw that it was water in the ladle as he brought it to his mouth, and then it turned to wine. Only the servants had that kind of perspective. If church is only ever about you, and if this is your first time, there is zero pressure. This is not about you. But if you've been following Jesus for a while now, if you've been a member since you can't even remember when you joined, if you've been here your whole life, maybe this is a generational church for you, but your only participation is to enjoy the wine that is presented to you, you're missing the best part. You're missing out on the whole point of this thing that we call church. If you want to be a part of the miracle, and Tim and Bill and I were talking the other week, we said, we need you here. The whole point, when you serve others, this is John chapter 17, high priestly prayer. When we love each other in such a way, and it's real, it's authentic, the outside world notices and they're influenced by it. That's kind of the point of church, is that it draws other in. Acts 1:8, be my witnesses. It doesn't say go to church so you're smarter than everyone. I mean, that's great. I hope that you learn great theology here. I hope that you go in groups and you learn wonderful things. The whole point of this thing called church is that you are able to be a witness for Jesus. This is not a model that is self-contained. We are failing at our mission if it never leaves the walls of this building. It's supposed to flow out of here. And so if you want to be a part of that, and I believe this with my whole heart, I love how Tim said it. He's like, we want you a part of that. We want you to be here. And he said it because we don't want you to miss out. Because listen, when our pastor talks, I believe that he's someone who has earned the right to be listened to with the service and the faithfulness he's given here. And he looks us in the eyes and he says, I believe God's called us to take a big chunk out of that 85%. Listen, we may not be able to build a building that houses 100% of the people here, but we can go after 20%. We got 40 acres. We can fit 6,000 people on this campus. He says, listen, I know that's kind of intense and that's a lot of people, and man, we got to build buildings and hire staff, and that's a lot of change, but let's start with 1,000 people. I believe when he says stuff like that, I believe it's going to happen. I believe that's the vision that he's given our pastor, he's given our church and our leadership. And so now it's not a conversation of if, it's a conversation of when. Jesus, our yes is on the table. I think that's why you're here. I think that's why you like coming to this church. This is a church where we put our yes on the table. We say yes to God, regardless of what it costs us. And we say, yes, we're going to serve you. It's going to happen. So it's not even just that we wish that you'll be here. It's not even just that, man, we need you. It's that you're going to miss out. God's going to do something incredible here, and he's going to reach our city in a way that's never reached before. And if you don't get to be a part of this, you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out on the best part of being a believer, and it's serving others. And listen, and I'm closing with this. I understand. One of my best friends is a consultant for a really large IT company. He is never home. He's gone as much as a truck driver is from his house. He helped me start the church that I pastored for 5 years. And the first year he wasn't in this new position. He was able to volunteer all the time. And he said, Matt, here's the deal, dude. I'm not going to be able to be up there to help. I can't come up during the week and help build anything. I'm not going to be able to help paint. I've got no late hours in me. I've got no Saturdays. I'm going to be in town for 36 hours with my family, and that's it. And then I fly back out to D.C., or I fly back out to Detroit, or I fly back out to wherever they're sending me. But he's like, listen, man, what I'm telling you is when I'm here, I'll do whatever I can. But Matt, this is what my container looks like for service. I love you, bro, but this is all I can give you. He said, but you know what? God's given me a fantastic job, and even though I have to travel a lot, He takes really good care of us. So my container financially looks more like this. Like, man, I can't give you this right now. I'd love to be able to give you this and serve there at the church like this, but my service looks like this, but I can give financially like this. And he was a big part of it. He gave a large percentage of our budget. We were able to reach a lot of people because he was willing to give like this. Some of you are in the same position. You say, listen, I don't have that kind of time, man. I'd love to lead a small group, but I can't. I travel during the week. I work 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. We don't have time to get the house right. I can't be a host home. Sunday morning, I'd love to teach at the 9:30 hour, but all I have time to do is come and worship at 11, and then I've got to go. I've got places I have to be, and it's not that I don't want to, but man, my cup to serve only looks like this. And maybe you're someone who's saying, yeah, but God has blessed me, and financially my jug looks like this. And I'm going to do my part, and I wish I could do, but I can do this. Some of you are like, man, that's not me at all. I just the career path I chose, or maybe the stage of life you're in. I remember being a young man, and I joked that I said there's young man broke and there's old man broke. Old man broke means the stock market dipped and some of your fortune is a little bit smaller. Young man broke means I don't know how we're going to buy gas to get to the store this week. It was different. The young man broke and old man broke. Some of you are saying, listen, my finances look more like this. And I'm going to be as faithful as I can. And like Travis said, I'm learning how to trust God, but I wish I could do more, but this is what I can do. This is what my container looks like for finances. But man, I got a lot of energy, and I got a lot of passion, and I want to serve, and my serving looks like this. You know that we all can carry different loads in the church. That's the whole beauty of the body of Christ. We're not all blessed the same financially. We're not all blessed the same physically. Some of you can physically do things here that others of you cannot. Some of you can financially do things here that others of you cannot. You know that it's more than that, though. Like, there's emotional leadership. There's spiritual leadership. Some of you may say, I don't have a lot of time and I don't have a lot of money, but God's given me the gift of teaching, and I'll be faithful to teach. And I don't have a lot of other resources right now, but man, I'll sign up. I'll be a leader. I'll teach a class Sunday morning, Wednesday night at my house. It doesn't matter. I can give there. Some of you say, I don't really have to give to teaching. I don't have a lot of money, but man, I can help support this emotionally, because if our church is going to grow and we're going to reach a lot of lost people that may look different from us, that may upset some folks, and you can say, listen, I'm going to be an encourager at this church. I'm going to encourage our pastor. I'm going to pray for our pastor and our staff. I'm going to go up to our kids workers and I'm going to hug them. I'm going to write them notes and say, we love you. We get it. We get to worship freely because you're willing to serve. I can carry this much emotionally. The reality is that God has blessed all of us differently. For some of you, it's going to look like this in some areas, and for some of you, it's going to look like this. All that matters is not how much you're able to carry, but that you're willing to pick up a jug. If we're going to reach this city for Jesus in ways that's never been reached before, we'll need more people to do this. And I want to invite you to be one of those. There are so many different areas that you can serve in this church. There are so many different places. If you have no idea, come find me after the service. I'll get you connected with the right people. There are so many, and this has no age limit on this. This is not, we're only looking for young people. We just need strong folks. No, we need all people. There's not too young to serve in the church, and there's not too old to serve in the church. It can look differently. Don't miss being a part of the miracle. You'll miss out on the best part. And what will happen is this church will grow, and we'll reach new people, and you won't be a part of their story. I'm finishing with this thought, and then we're going to do we'll do our final worship song. Here's how it looks in real life. Here's practical application. Just so you know, here's the secret. Not a single one of our daycare preschool workers that volunteer here, we'll use them because honestly what they do has the most impact on us. Unsung heroes in our church. Here's how it really works in real life. Not a single one of them woke up this morning and was like, hope they're all sick. I I hope I get to just wipe the grossest boogers that I've ever wiped before. Amen. I hope that I get to wipe snot and just deal with gross kid fluids. It's going to be amazing. That will make my Sunday fantastic. You know, and someone else, nobody woke up this morning in our toddler room saying, I hope they all go number 2 today. I hope they're all doing number 2. I hope that every diaper that I change is a dirty diaper. A gross, like, make me gag dirty diaper. That would be fantastic. Lord, would you bless me in such a way that I could change? Not a single one. And if you did, we got to have a conversation after the service. That's sick, man. So nobody woke up like that. That's not how it works. Not a single one of our nursery workers, daycare, preschool, none of them did that. Here's what really happens though in real life. They say, oh, it's disgusting. And as they're carrying their water jug of serving, they're like, oh, I hate wiping boogers. I gag every time I change a dirty diaper. Oh, that kid tells me the same story every week. And even though it's tough, and they climb on you and they pull your hair and you can't wear nice things to church anymore because the kids destroy it. And even though you're carrying your water, what happens is that 3-year-old grows up out of your classroom and they get older and older. And then one day, they walk down this aisle here. And they're standing with their peers, and we fan them all out and across the front here. And that little boy that you used to change his diaper is now a young man, and he's handsome, and he's got all these regalia on, and he looks so good, and he's excited, and his mom and dad are proud, and there's pictures, and you guys are crying because Bill's giving you marbles, and it's intense. And you know what you're going to do at that time? You don't care about dirty diapers anymore. You're going to sit in your spot where you always sit. You're going to sit in your pew. You're going to look at him and you go, I wiped his butt when he was a kid. White boogers right off his face. Look at that tall, handsome drink of water right there. I used to wipe his butt. And then you tell him, right? Then you go afterwards and it's awful. And you say, you know, when you were 3, I changed your diapers. Don't do that. That's so awkward. But you're going to anyways. And he's like, oh, thanks. So awkward. And he walks out of the room and he goes to his lunch that they take with all the other 18-year-olds that just graduated. And you look back and you think about the time that you served him. And you say, you know what? I was a part of that. I invested in that. I get to celebrate that win today. When he leaves and he goes off to college, I was part of that. I was a part of his story. That's what it looks like to be the miracle in church. Because the reality is nobody likes changing diapers. Nobody likes sweating when they're putting out the signs. Nobody likes waking up an extra hour early to make sure the coffee pot's ready. But when you impact someone's life in a real and tangible way, that's when the miracle happens in church. And you get to say, I was a part of that. I got to be a part of that young lady's story. I got to be a part of that young man's story. That family. Here's the reality. There are lost people in Independence and all over northern Kentucky right now. They need you to be the miracle. There's going to be a couple, their marriage is on the rocks, and she says to him, let's just try church. Don't divorce me yet. Just stick with me. Give me 5 more months. Just go to that church with me. There's going to be people that come here and they need you to be the miracle. There are going to be children that they have horrible home lives. And they're in foster care, and grandma's bringing them to church, and they have heroin. We have the Northern Kentucky Hates Heroin campaign going on here, and they have horrible home lives, and the only good thing about their week is church, and that the loving men and women at Hickory Grove invest in them in these kids' departments, and it's the highlight of their week. There's going to be children in here that they need you to be the miracle for them. There are going to be people, there's going to be a teenager that's having identity issues, and they're cutting, and they're turning to drugs and alcohol, and they're self-medicating, and they have no self-worth, and they need people that will go down into our student center and love on them, and let them be a little rougher on the edges, and try to correct them in love, but let them be lost and love on them. There's going to be teenagers that are going to come to this church, and they need you to be the miracle. If you want to be a part of what God's going to do here, that's the kind of stuff that we need help with. And I'm telling you, if you don't step up to the plate, you're going to regret it. You're going to miss out on being the miracle in someone's life. Because if you're here today and you'd say, yes, I'm a follower of Jesus, that means someone was the miracle in your life at one point. Somebody was willing to change your diaper. Somebody was willing to go down in the student center for you. Somebody woke up early and poured a cup of coffee for you. You may never give to this church, but somebody gave money that bought the pew that you're sitting in right now. You may never give a dime, but somebody gives so that you have AC right now. Somebody was the miracle for you. That's why you're here. It's not easy. It's messy. It's awkward. Ministry is weird. But I dare you to be the miracle in someone's life. I dare you. It will radically change your faith in Jesus. You show up here for a purpose, to be somebody's miracle. You take your next step with Jesus, and you don't need my help to do that. It's the design of the church.